Greetings, Mindcrafters, and welcome to another exciting Minecraft episode on this glorious day. Wow, I'm out on my back deck right now. It's September. Little Giovanni's laying right by close to my feet. It's kind of like a leisurely Sunday, and there's nothing in morning, and there's nothing more fulfilling, rewarding, just stimulating. I'd rather be doing right now than being with all of you and having a talk about a super hot topic. So my name is Kimberly Quinn and hosting our Minecraft podcast here. So thank you for listening today. What we're going to talk about is one of the ways anxiety manifests, one of the many ways anxiety manifests and creates, it's kind of both, is avoidance behavior. And so I see it in our students a lot. It doesn't have to be students. If you're listening and you're 34, 50, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 110, does not mean you're not still a student. But I mean, in traditional, the Gen Zs are the most anxious and depressed generation the United States has ever seen. So I definitely see it in them. It's also true, however, of those of us seasoned folks. So basically, let's just do a quick little brainy 101. Anxiety happens in the limbic system of the brain, right? So if you made a fist, then opened it up, right about in the center of your palm is the limbic system. Then close it back up and picture like something the size of an avocado pit there. Actually, an avocado is a good example too, because that's where the limbic system resides. So right in the middle. And the amygdala, there are two of them, shaped like little almonds on the ends of, I think it's ventrolateral horns. I'd have to look it up to be exactly precise, but they're right there as part of the limbic system. And they're sort of the culprits. Well, culprits in a sense that they're the source of sort of where, what flips the switch on the, anxiety or worry circuit. Also, they keep us alive, so we don't want to really throw the baby out with the bathwater there. But the whole point is that the worry circuit is self-reinforcing, inherently self-reinforcing. So I'm not going to get into it too heavily because we've got all kinds of episodes on that. Just quickly, when we get engaged in, let's say, going back to check if the door is locked or the curling iron was on, and it's kind of this compulsive need, it's going to make us late. We go back and check. Of course, it's locked, right? And then when we touch the doorknob, or that we go in and see that the curling iron was unplugged, there's this immediate sense of relief because the brain is trying to alleviate its own anxiety, and it does that by these sort of repetitive automatic behaviors. For the large part, irrational. We know we locked the door. We know we unplugged the curling iron. And even if we didn't, let's say, lock the dorm door, rationally, there are, students walking around all day, broad daylight. Plus, you have to have it in you to go walk into someone's room and take something. You could leave a door wide open. If the people walking by who would never take anything in a million years, you don't have any worries. You have to have it in you, right? So we think about this rationally, it makes no sense. Yet we go back and check the door to see if it's locked, and of course it is. So the minute we touch the doorknob, we have this sense of relief. The very second we touch that door knob and get that sense of relief, the brain has reinforced it's even stronger the next time we have that urge to go check something or fill in the blank with flicking a light switch or putting a radio station channel on an even number, or whatever is a obsessive compulsive thought. And we're not talking about disorder. That's a word I choose not to use because it's negative and shaming and stupid, and it should be kind of deleted from the English language because there are plenty of obsessive compulsive thoughts, and there isn't a person in the world who hasn't experienced that, even the Zen monks. And who knows if that's maybe the reason that they became a monk? I don't know. But so I changed that from OCD, which is a thing in the DSM-5, to OCT to include the rest of us because, again, there's not a human being out there who hasn't had an unwanted, intrusive thought and knowing that it's irrational. Okay, so that's how we're going to start off. And then now we're going to move towards what it means to engage in avoidance behavior and also versus safety behavior because they're similar. People can get them confused. So we're going to differentiate between those two. And so I know that many of you are aware that I write for Psychology Today, and I am also a big fan of Psychology Today. And I like to read, certainly what others write and the various topics that I'm interested in. And so it's interesting because I'm also doing a talk at a university in a couple weeks, not even a week and a half, and I'm super excited for it. And it's about this because faculty, this one's specific, sort of mostly, I think, directed towards faculty, also inclusive of staff, because I just did a thing a couple weeks ago actually for, I went and spoke to another university, local college on, I spoke to their counseling staff. And so I do things, I kind of run around and do this stuff. Anyway, what's coming up in a week and a half is a talk on less coddling, more adventure. So it's just about what we're talking about. Now, today's talk with this podcast, this discussion we're having, doesn't have to be higher ed or even in the classroom, because there are lots of ways we engage in avoidance behavior, and we'll talk about some of those too. Specifically, though, I landed upon this good article by Bridget Flynn Walker, PhD, about the trap of avoidance and safety behaviors, which again can be out in the professional world. You know, avoiding, meeting up with somebody in the workplace that you really need to and make your life a whole lot easier, all the way up to job interviews. Specifically, the what I'm going to talk about in a couple weeks is more with students. And let's just say, let's take one example of having anxiety, and then not having the urge to not go to class. Well, here's the thing: just like when we gave the doorknob example with checking to see if the dorm room is locked, or your season grown up and you're on the way to work and you're like, oh my god, I think I forget to make sure that the wood stove was out, or I forgot, I didn't throw water on it, or I don't know, I didn't check if our house door was locked. I didn't check if the oven was off. You drive all the way back, make yourself late for work, and sure enough, it's all off, it's all fine. You can turn that into whatever example you want to. And again, the minute we do whatever said behavior is, we're reinforced. Well, the same thing is true. I'm thinking it's not just the young adult population. I'm kind of going to go back and forth because I realize I want to reach all listeners, and this is ubiquitous. The what if thinking is ubiquitous. That's a manifestation of anxiety. So the same thing with the checking the door, the curling iron, or the stove, or whatever. When we allow the brain to engage in what if thinking, what if I don't like my major? What if I don't like my roommate? What if I never find a partner? What if I have not saved up enough retirement? What if I don't move quickly on that house and somebody else sneaks and takes it away from us? What if there's somebody better out there for me and I stay with this person even though I'm not unhappy? What if, what if, what if, what if? You can fill in the what ifs forever. Also, all the catastrophizing, which means the worst case scenario planning and all of that. Well, here's the thing: whenever we allow the brain, and the word is allow, to revisit that place, let's say it's the um, what if I graduate and don't get a job, or I graduate and do get a job and don't make enough money? And what if I graduate, get a job and make money and I disappoint my parents because it's not what they want? Okay? Each and every time we go for one of those three thoughts or any other what if thought, it's like touching the doorknob. The brain's like, I found it for you. I found it for you. See? See, I did it. And by doing so, by finding that what if thought, I relieved our anxiety. And it really thinks it did because the brain doesn't know the difference. Obviously, in reality, by finding and allowing that what if, hamster wheel of negative worry loop thinking, it's self reinforcing and just strengthened it for the next time. It just, so think about leaving to class example, or the job interview, whatever it is, internship, and we cave into the anxiety of not going to class. There's an immediate kind of dope fix for, oh, I dodged that bullet. I don't have that anxiety rush of going to class or the internship or whatever. Now what happens? It was just reinforced and made stronger. And so this is the big conundrum. And this, I'm talking about specifically student examples at this minute, because well-meaning people, faculty, well-meaning faculty, good-hearted professors, good-hearted staff, good-hearted accommodations crew are creating accommodations that are really enabling this, and not only not benefiting students but actually harming them. And of course, that isn't the intention. The focus is on keeping them comfortable and making things less, and take care of yourself and leave the classroom, which I'm going to get into too, because that causes disruption in the classroom and actually makes other people's anxiety go up. So really, it's really important that we that we acknowledge what avoidance behavior is and then think of ways to sort of stop enabling it and making it stronger and instead shift into a place of a more strength and resilience way to deal with anxiety. Okay, so I got to give a little inspiration, even though I kind of talk about this a whole lot and have for years. I do want to give Bridget Flynn Walker from Psychology Today a super big shout out because her article entitled The Trap of Avoidance and Safety Behaviors, 4 reasons avoidance and safety behaviors keep you trapped in the anxiety cycle, is one that this has been super inspiring for me, really. And so let's first define how Dr. Walker explains avoidance behaviors. I kind of just said it, but we'll just go straight to the horse here. So, avoidance refers to ways you might try to stay away from a particular situation that triggers worry or fear. For example, if you feel anxious talking to people you don't know, you may avoid talking to strangers. So that's Bridget's example there, Dr. Walker's example there. I gave you the anxious, having anxiety feelings, oh no, class, and then just skipping class, and then it's stronger. So the next time student misses class, it's even stronger. And I've seen this so many times in the last 13, almost 14 years I've been teaching. Then embarrassment feelings set in, which make it all worse. And often the student can end up in a super spiral down, end up on probation, which we now call academic recovery, much more positive, or they actually fail, or they end up dropping out. And this cycle can be prevented if we have the awareness, the knowledge. Knowledge is power, as they say, right? When we have the awareness of what anxiety is, that the worry circuit itself is self reinforcing, all on its own. We don't have to do anything to make it stronger except cave into it. And so this is what we sort of need to stop doing in order to help our students, our other young adults, our young adult children, our teenage children, and maybe even ourselves. Because as mentioned, seasoned grown-ups also engage in avoidance behavior. Okay, and then we have safety behavior. These are a little different. So safety behaviors, according to Dr. Walker, are the things you do either mentally or in actions to prevent whether you fear whatever you fear might happen in a situation that triggers anxiety from actually happening. For example, so this is a doing versus the kind of just worry circuit thing of avoidance behavior. This is actually acting on it by trying to prevent it. So, for example, if you fear driving on, like a speedy highway, you might check the traffic conditions, the weather conditions, the update on the uh, rush hour traffic situation, check and make sure they've repaired recent, large potholes, whatever, to avoid having whatever it is increase your anxiety. So Dr. Walker goes on to talk about, avoiding situations that can trigger, discomfort in a person is the most common way that people attempt to manage their anxiety. It's kind of what's intuitive. However, what's intuitive is really, again, not only strengthening the anxiety situation in the person, but also causing further harm. So she says, for situations they can't avoid, they also may rely on safety behaviors. So here's the thing: it's intuitive for when we're feeling anxious, and though again it can be 60, 70, 80, or 110 year olds, though it's definitely more predominant in the teenage young adult, and I mean young adults right up through their 20s, because the prefrontal cortex, in fact, is not fully developed in either sex until the age of 25. So I've explained this to my Minecraft students a lot of times, and also done a disclaimer that I would never, ever, ever be condescending, explaining that developmentally speaking, cognitively speaking, neuropsychologically speaking, they're still kind of sort of at the tail end of adolescence in a sense, cognitively speaking, because the brain is still developing. And so the prefrontal cortex, of course, involves all the the higher thinking functions, which include impulse control and planning and decision making and judgment and reasoning and all that good stuff. So it's super important to really understand this, that even though, and I explained this to them, that let's say from the range of 13 to 25, obviously the 13, 14, 15, 16s or whatever are going to not be nearly as far along as a 21, 23, 25-year old young adult. It's just explaining that there's still half baked bread or 2/3 or 3/4 baked bread until the prefrontal cortex is fully developed. So that said, and also I want to bring up the point that the traditional age for college age, again, whether they're in college or not, but the traditional age for mental health situations to sort of surface, and obviously they can happen earlier and they can happen later. Though it's kind of like the epicenter is during like about 18 to 23 ish, right? So they're right in the, dead center of the kind of mental health hurricane that happens, right during the traditional age for college students, and when a lot of these mental health situations surface and manifest. So here's the thing: we're only talking about anxiety here. So when I was talking about accommodations, we're not talking about people being students being visually impaired or hearing losses or dyslexia or any of the other things and we're not, that we're talking about. We're talking only about anxiety and accommodations, and not, and I'm saying accommodations, these can be in a college situation, but they can also be parents and enabling as well. And it's not said with judgment. Many of you who listen know that we have 5 fabulous, just amazing young adult children. As you know, I'm a neurodivergent thinker and in the Fast Mind Club. I have a child I have a child who also is in the Fast Mind Club, and we have one child who also struggles with things, or not struggles, is challenged with, works with anxiety. And so it's super common, it's ubiquitous across the United States for sure. And again, we know that the Gen Zs are the most anxious generation of young adults the United States at least has ever encountered. So this is why this is a really important conversation to have, because even though our intentions are good as parents, as educators, as staff working with young adults, whether it's counseling or coaching or whatever, are well intentioned as we are, if we're enabling the avoidance behavior, we are not only not benefiting our students, our athletes, our clients, whatever, we are actually sending them backwards, and we are allowing them, since we're the seasoned adults in the mix, we are allowing them to make their anxiety much, 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 much worse. In fact, at the beginning of her article, this is what they just changed this in Psychology Today. Actually, I've written for them for I don't even know how long, 3 or 4 years or something. I don't know. It's enormous fun actually, but they recently changed this, and they have asked us to start out with 3 bullet points, which I'm sure is meant to attract readers, right? When especially in today's world with the kind of greatly reduced attention spans of many of us. So anyway, so Dr. Walker, right out of the gate, says they're called key points in Psychology Today. Her first one is avoiding situations that trigger anxiety and seeking reassurance are counterproductive strategies for anxiety. They're not going to work. And not only they're not going to work, they're going to make it worse. So when we rely on what's intuitive, that can work sometimes, but not always. Because remember, the brain is on its own mission to reduce its own anxiety. At what it's even if it's the path of least resistance, which is what avoidance behavior is. It's taking the path of least resistance rather than doing the necessary heavy lift to stop it from happening. Next, she says avoidance and safety behaviors become habits that make anxiety worse and harder to overcome. So this is where I chime in with the cognitive psychology piece, because on average, in general, it takes about 21 days for a habit to shift and stick. And that, though I'm not looking at it, I know for a fact it comes from Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit. And obviously, that average is, you know, uh, choosing to eat a piece of fruit every day and shifting into that healthy habit is not the same as quitting smoking. So there's a middle. And anxiety would lean toward the harder part, right? So it's very easy It's very easy when we allow and enable, to cave into not going to class, to cave in to not going to whatever, for it to become way worse and harder to overcome. And there's also another accommodation that's not in the student's best interest. Or if there's another example at work, definitely in the workplace, is accommodations for leaving the classroom. So, and that's got a couple levels to it, because we're preparing them to, hopefully we are educating the whole student. They walk in the classroom, we're educating the whole student. So the plan is for them to, be happy, well-adjusted, successful adults contributing to the world in some way when they go out to be a professional person, right? So this being able to leave in the middle of class, first of all, is very disruptive to the other students in the class, and leaving is also contagious. So one of the issues, besides the avoidance thing, is that there are other students, and let's say it's a workplace, that where there are maybe neurodivergent other students are also professional people in this, let's say, the staff meeting, or executive meeting or whatever, who may be in the fast mind club, meaning ADHD, or may have autism, or may have, who knows what they have, something that they're probably not going to tell you. So I know with the fast mind group, if somebody gets up and leaves, kind of repeated, these are complete, I don't know what am I trying to say, frequent little leavings, also of checking text messages or whatever, it takes us a solid 15 to 20 minutes to regroup. And that's obviously not fair, whether that's a classroom or whether that's a professional working environment. So there's that, where we're giving, the student or the young adult professional, or our young adult child or whoever, the message that their behavior is all that matters, is also problematic, because all of us, our behavior, whatever we do, affects other people. So we're missing the boat there too, because it's not just obviously all about them. What that leaving affects everybody else in the room, whether it's again, workplace, or whether it's classroom, or whether it's Thanksgiving, and getting up 95 times. And now there's out in the professional world, we're trying to, as parents, as educators, as staff, as coaches, as whoever, trying to, sort of assist and support this young adult to be a, successful, productive human being out in the world and be their best self. And when we're enabling and coddling, and take making things less and easier, quote unquote easier, because it's not in the long run. Think of it, they got a job on 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 Wall Street, and they're new at it, they're doing well, and then there overcomes their boss, and the stock market's maybe crushing it, and they're on the phone with this big client, and they say, "Gee, Mr. Gates, I realize you're sinking 6 or 7 figures in this, but I got to dip out and go hug my stuffed animal for 10 minutes." I mean, that's not going to fly out in the world. Or even if you're a first grade teacher and you're allowed to leave constantly, a first grade teacher cannot leave her classroom on any kind of frequent basis. Obviously, she got an urgent phone call from her partner, or a young adult child, or something, whatever. So obviously you could grab somebody next door, they could come and sit with your class for a few minutes. But if that's a daily thing, 3 or 4 times, that young adult is not going to have that job for very long. And we need to ask ourselves, when we're busy, allowing the leaving, allowing the lack of consequences, or reduced consequences, for missing classes, missing tests. I don't personally give tests, but I have had so many faculty lately just pulling out their hair over this disruption that this enabling avoidance behaviors is causing, and at all different places. I've got professor friends at all different college institutions. And then the latest one, the latest one, is, I couldn't even believe this. One of my colleagues at, I won't say the college, but one of my colleagues who's at an out of state college recently, there was an accommodation to allow that student to wear noise canceling headphones, which could be plugged into a cell phone. Who knows? And I couldn't even believe my ears. They couldn't believe their ears. And I've since mentioned it to other friends. I just can't even believe it. So the message, even though the intention isn't to be completely disrespectful, that's what the message is to the professor and the entire class, is that it's okay for this student to tune out not only the professor, but his or her or their classmates. And they're missing out on the class themselves. So think about that. If we were on a date and we're plugged into earphones, you probably wouldn't you probably wouldn't be invited out for a second date. If you're there with a sibling or parent or best friend, it's just the message is disrespect, right? You're tuning. What are you sitting there for dinner at dinner for if you've got earphones in? If you're again, you're out in a professional business meeting and your boss is giving a talk or the CEO or whoever, and you're sitting there with headphones in, there's a good chance on your 6-month evaluation you might not get invited back. At the very least, you'd be talked to. And this is the direction we're going. And we need to do a 180 and flip the script and go back the other direction. And rather than caving in and enabling these repetitive intrusive voices that are causing with a capital C, this very maladaptive avoidance behavior, we need to instead shift into a place of teaching our young adult, again, whether we're, you know, teaching in a high school, or we're faculty at a college or university, or again, coaches, parents, grandparents, or whatever. We need to really do a 180 here and start to embed, teach some strength-based skills in our young adults to learn how to really deal with their anxiety. And the only way out is through. That is just a plain and simple fact. We got to starve the monster to reduce these anxious thoughts, these repetitive fear-based thoughts, to reduce them and make them go away so they can not only function better in the world, but more importantly, create that cognitive space where they can take in new information and enjoy their lives, be happier, and with a much higher level of life satisfaction. This is the direction we need to go. Okay, so then Dr. Walker talks about. Oh, she also says her last bullet point. I don't think I read that one. Giving up avoidance and safety behaviors retrains the brain so it doesn't see danger where there is no threat. Giving up avoidance and safety behaviors retrains the brain so it doesn't see danger where there is no threat. And as um, I teach a course called Minecraft, which is all about rewiring the brain. And people don't realize it's just like anything. It's a heavy lift in the beginning, kind of like playing the guitar. I picked up the guitar years ago, and it was a short-lived experience. When you pick up the guitar for the first time, you get calluses because it's a heavy lift and it's hard. Eventually, if you stick with it, the calluses go away, and you're playing Margaritaville. Well, it's the same thing with learning to control your thinking. It's a little bit harder if you've allowed the habit loop to continue. And again, the word is allow. But still, when it comes down to it, it is still up to the person to control their own thinking. Think about this. There are only two choices. Either you control your thoughts or your thoughts control you, right? So which is more pleasant? Doesn't say, now, just like with my Minecrafters, I'll put up both hands. Did I say it was that simple? And they'll nod after they get trained a bit. Yes, it is that simple. Is it that easy? No, it's a heavy lift in the beginning, but it can really, really work. And actually, I've got videos on tried and true anxiety hacks. We're going to stay on topic for right now. Okay, so Dr. Walker talks about the four things the four main ones that happens when we allow avoidance behavior. So the first one is it becomes a habit. We just talked about that, and the brain loves patterns. Now, they can be positive or negative. In this case, the avoidance behavior is extremely negative. So we can strengthen it, like we talked about, and it gets stronger, 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 and like a brick wall. So, two, you don't learn anything new. Why? Because your working memory is clogged up with allowing all these negative thoughts. It's like throwing a wrench in a moving bicycle tire. What happens? You all get tripped up, you go flying over the handlebars. It takes up a lot of working memory space. And so no new information is coming in, which means those of us who are educators, middle school, high school, college level, doing professional trainings out in the world, whatever, it means that our effort's a big waste because if all this circular, self-reinforcing, worry loop stuff is going on, very little, if any, new information is going in. So you should just know that. Number three, you miss out on good stuff. Yes, because when your mind is wrapped up in reinforcing all these intrusive thoughts, there's not a lot of room for anything else to come in. And again, when it comes in fragmented. I could do a whole other thing on memory, My degree is in cognitive psych, and I would love to do that. We'll do that maybe on a different episode. And four, lastly, with a big asterisk and highlight, is you make the problem worse. You make the problem worse. And so we've really got to, as educators, as parents, grandparents, again, any staff who work with young adults, we've got to really get this. We're making it worse. The intuitive plan with anxiety is enabling it, and generationally, it's really it's an epidemic, actually, and we need to stop adding it. It's adding to the problem. It's like a bonfire is going already strongly, and then we go get lighter fluid and make it and let it get out of control. That's what we're doing. Well intentioned, but that's what we're doing. So then lastly, Dr. Walker talks about extricating yourself from the anxiety trap. And again, I do videos with really great hacks that will work for most people, not in any way saying they're meant to be in the place of professional treatment, not at all, but they'll help most people. Anyway, she says, have you ever wondered why anxiety still bothers you despite your best efforts to avoid situations or take steps to reassure and convince yourself there is no danger? You thought your strategies made sense. Well-meaning mental health professionals and advice columnists may have even told you to follow such strategies. Then she says, heck, may have suggested or engaged in such strategies with your kids. So what we need to do, well, the first step is awareness. We cannot do what we don't know. A very good friend of mine says that. We can't do what we don't know. And then once we have awareness, we have responsibility. And this is what I'm talking about here. Once we have awareness, we have responsibility. So if this is our own avoidance behavior, we have responsibility to ourselves. If it's our students, we have responsibility as a professor, high school teacher, middle school teacher, whatever, and in any other facet that we're working with young adults, because we have got to start doing, and it'll make the episode too long if I go into all of those strategies. But for right now, I'm going to leave it as this. We have got to stop enabling this behavior, stop the accommodations of they can leave, and that one friend of mine, that one colleague of mine at a different college, and always canceling headphones, I mean, if one thing, it may be a 3-hour class, okay, but an hour and 15-minute class, no. And I'm not sure what the accommodations are in high school, but none of these are beneficial or effective in actually making the problem worse. Okay, so that's it, and thank you for listening. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful northern Vermont in my backyard on this sunny Sunday. Have a mindful day.